consider this a professional courtesy.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Real Estate Realities with the Rebel Broker. My name's Robert Whitelaw, and I am the Rebel Broker. Licensed real estate broker in the state of California, member of the National Association of Realtors. But please, don't hold that against me. I hope you all had a fantastic weekend. Welcome to Monday. I know a lot of people are on holiday today, which is perfectly fine. Maybe you can use this as an opportunity to catch up on stuff you want to do. Maybe put a little more energy into those goals for the week. Who knows? However you want to spend it, I hope you enjoy it. I hope it's everything you hoped it would be. We are going to review Zillow's top 10 predictions for 2018 in terms of growth and whatnot. There's also some interesting data that we're going to cover that I think says a lot. Median home values for these areas, year-over-year home value forecast, median rent, year-over-year rent forecast, job openings per person, income growth, population growth, unemployment rate. All things that I think are good numbers to be aware of in the communities that you want to invest in, because these are all underpinnings of a growing or great and strong market for real estate, no matter what you want to do. We've also got a couple other little tidbits that I think we might get into first. But before we go into those, let me remind everyone how to get in contact with me. The best way is through the website. TheRebelBroker.com is the URL, so head on over there. From there, you can send along any ideas, suggestions, information, questions that you might have simply by clicking on the contact button in the menu bar. Feel free to send those along using that. It's easy. Just type in what you want to ask or submit and click send, and it will go. No fuss, no muss. Plus, if you'd like to join the Rebel Underground, from there you can click a link to join the Rebel Underground, or if you prefer to use your personal phone, your cell phone, just send the word Rebel Broker to the number 44222. That's send the word Rebel Broker 44222. It'll identify who you're talking to, so you know you're sending it to the right place. Send along the information I asked for, and you are all set. Also, if you'd like to support the show, you can click the big red button at the top of the page titled Take the Survey to support the show. Now, the great thing is, not only are you helping support the show by answering a few demographic-style questions, but you are also getting yourself into the running for a $50 Amazon gift card. We tend to give these things away every month. We've given away a ton of money so far. And why take a chance on not winning it next time around? Go ahead, get in there, submit your information, use the same email address both times you're asked, because the way you'll win is your email address gets randomly selected from the pool. So if you aren't at that email address, I won't be able to give you the money because you won't be there. So make sure you're using an email address that you check at least every day, because if I send you the notice that you've won and 20 or 48 hours goes by, I go on to the next person. So, all right. With all of that out of the way, let's jump into some things that we've talked about in the past on the show in terms of just updates, right? First, I wanted to talk a little bit about automated cars, simply because all of the biggest pundits continue to talk about this being decade plus away, and I honestly don't think it is. I think that the impacts this will have in terms of jobs, in terms of how I think it's a groundswell change in how things happen. A lot like the Industrial Revolution and the Silicon Revolution, this is going to be a revolution like that. There's a huge number of folks whose job it is to drive things from point A to point B. And the drivers today will be the equivalent of the guys who were elevator operators in the teens and the 20s. They just won't exist. People will wonder why anyone ever drove. And the crazy thing is, think about all the infrastructure that supports people who drive, right? If you, aside from you as an individual, picking up and that stuff might still happen to a certain degree. I mean, in terms of you stopping to buy the usual things you get, whether you're getting your coffee on the way to work or whatever. But think about shipping, right? Guys who drive cross country. Suddenly, those aren't going to be people in those things. There at some point, it's literally going to be autonomous, and they won't have to stop and instead of staying in their rig, rent a room or pay to take a shower somewhere or to buy food. So there's a whole industry that really serves truckers. That's why they call them truck stops. And the only part of the stop will be an automated vehicle that stops to refuel. But let me also suggest something else. Without having to create a cab that can accommodate a human being, they're going to add extra fuel to these bad boys. So you're going to find that these things are going to be able to travel across the entire country without stopping. Imagine that. I mean, in terms of good things happening, I think it does provide a net good, but in the near term, it's going to be a rocky road for folks who are either in that industry or whose business relies on it. And that's going to call for a big change. And anytime big changes happen in society, I think it's important for folks who are entrepreneurial minded or who are investment minded, particularly when you're doing things relating to real estate, need to understand what sustains your communities. What are the things that make your community what it is? What are the big job things that go on there? And if there's a whole lot of reliance on things that relate to this, I think it's an important thing to know, right? If you see this coming, you can take steps to prepare for it. So let's go ahead and hit this article because I think this one's ridiculously interesting, and literally this is 1 year away. GM plans to release cars with no steering wheel in 2019. The automaker's fully autonomous car has no wheel and no pedal. So they're not just saying, we're going to let the car drive for you while you're sitting at the wheel. They're saying, you're not even going to have a wheel. We're going to design our cars specifically for folks who are passengers. There will be no drivers, and they're going to do it in the 2019 model year. That's pretty amazing and is showing an awful lot of confidence in where they think things are going to go regulation-wise. And I'll tell you what, I don't think they're wrong. If anyone has an inside track on what's going to happen regulatory-wise, GM is right up there. Of course, all the big auto manufacturers have huge lobbies and all that kind of stuff. But there are just too many bells that can be rung with automated cars in terms of lowered fatality statistics and all these other types of things. So there will be some unions that are going to put up a fight. But from the standpoint of understanding what's going to happen in the communities, I don't think anything's going to stop this. And everybody out there who predicts this stuff or not everybody, but I mean a good chunk of them, we're pushing that out to 2030. And I think in big cities, you are going to see this happening way before then. And I think GM is one example of a auto manufacturer that is going sooner rather than later. So I think these are the things that we should be aware of. Again, knowing what's coming before it comes is almost always a good thing. At least it lets you prepare or make some other plans. All right. The other thing I wanted to talk about today is we've talked a lot about the Sacramento housing market. And 2 years ago, it was one of my you should go here to think about investing options. And I think that was true at the time. Last year was great for Sacramento. I think Sacramento can continue to be good. I think those who acquired properties in the time frame I suggested in 2016, maybe even early 2017, are going to be happy. I don't think that anyone's going to see losses from their rentals. But I think anybody who was doing a buy, hold, sell kind of strategy is going to think about wanting to move sooner rather than later. We've definitely hit an interesting point in the Sacramento market because remember, what things we've talked about over the last few weeks particularly have been pivot points. Where are instances where you see a thing happen in the market that indicates a change? Well, I think we've seen one here in the Sacramento housing market. We'll see. I mean, 1 month is 1 month, but the December numbers, and if this was going to happen in any month where it then wouldn't be carried on in other months, it would be December, I think, is a reasonable thing to say. But this isn't what happened last December in Sacramento. All right. What we saw were sales were down 8% year over year, and active inventory was up 8% year over year. Now, that's an interesting combination where the amount of sales go down, but the inventory goes up. And we have not seen that in many markets in a very long time. So it's interesting to see this. Sacramento Association of Realtors started breaking out REOs in May 2008 and short sales in June 2009 as separate things. Now, in December, total sales were down 8% from December 2016. Conventional equity sales were down 3.8% compared to the same month last year. In December, 2.9% of all resales were distressed sales. This was up from 2.3% last month and down from 4.8% in December of 2016. So in terms of healthy numbers, the health of what did get sold, improvements in the overall health, but a change in that particular market that suggests we might see Sacramento having reached a peak. Now, I have no doubt that my good buddy Scott Blasius up in Sacramento is going to respond to this one and give me maybe a market check, and we'll see what he says about this. But it's interesting to note. Now, active listings inventory decreased, dropping 28.9%. Now, what's interesting to me is that's a pretty substantial drop. The months of inventory also decreased, dropping 31.3 from 1.6 months to 1.1 months. A year ago, the months of inventory was 1, and active listings inventory stood at 1,458, which is 7.4% below the current figure. So interesting to note that. Now, is this something to get too hustled up about? No. If we're kind of comparing this more to quote unquote normal markets, it's not that bad. But it's an indication of a change. No matter what you say it is, right? Whether there's clearly something that's happened in December, we'll see if it continues in January and February. But no matter what it is, whether it is a change to a decline or a flattening or a more normal market, that's a pivot point, right? That tells us something. So for those of you who are trackers of Sacramento, and I'm one of them, Scott still, up until very recently, was still running searches for me on the Sacramento market, which I was checking out. My local search actually ended up getting kind of the same level of access his did, so I kind of had two running at the same time. But I do still look at Sacramento markets, and when I find properties that are interesting, I'll run the numbers, and you can still do positive cash flow with the current numbers in Sacramento. So I don't think it's a market to turn away from, but it's interesting to see this. Not so much because Sacramento is also one of those markets I like to look at. It's just one more thing to think about. We talked a little bit about Las Vegas. We've talked about Sacramento now. We've talked about other communities like New York, and particularly Manhattan, where we're trying to decide if we're in a pivot point. Now, if I get enough markets where I'm seeing a pivot happen, that starts to make me think there might be a national shift, which would be huge, right? We're always going to see things in our submarkets, but something that would be national would be an interesting thing to track. Okay, next, we're going to go ahead and cover that top 10 list from Zillow, but before we do, we're going to take a quick break, so don't go away. We'll be right back with those numbers.
Are you ready to jump in and start your search for your first investment property? Maybe you've decided that it's time to own your own home, or maybe you're ready to sell your home and move on to something new. No matter what your goal is, the Rebel Broker can help. That's right, aside from hosting this show, I am also the owner-broker of Whitelaw & Sons Real Estate Services right here in Silicon Valley. With over 25 years experience serving Silicon Valley, Morgan Hill, San Martin, and Gilroy, I or one of my great agents can help you achieve your goals in real estate. So if you're ready to look into taking that next step towards achieving your real estate goals, point your browser at www.soldbyrobert.com. That's www.soldbyrobert.com and get in touch. Let me show you how I will earn your business and your respect. Again, that's www.soldbyrobert.com, or you can call me at 408-852-0525. California Bureau of Real Estate ID 00984-909.
Welcome back, everyone, to this Monday edition of Real Estate Realities with the Rebel Broker. We covered a couple of interesting little intro items in the first part of the show, but now we're going to jump to the meaty bits, which is Zillow's top 10 markets. And it's always interesting to see where they think stuff is going to, where they think the hottest housing markets are going to be. They're not always right, and I would argue that several on this list may technically be hot, but ones I would be very wary of, ones I'm not sure would give you the bang for the buck. So we're going to cover the list and then chat about it. And remember, this is Zillow's expectations for 2018. So there you go. Some of the stuff that were big elements in their decisions on these areas: accelerating home prices, expanding income and jobs, and new residents. So we'll see how that plays out here. So let's start with number 10. The ones at the huddle at the top of this list or about midway and then up are interesting. First, it's Dallas, Texas. Median home value. And this is a great number. I like this. $218,300. That I think is a great potential low barrier to entry for an awful lot of folks. And I know some folks are thinking I'm nuts with $218,000. But when you're in a marketplace like mine, where the average home price is $1.1 million, you can start to see where I'm coming from. The year-over-year value forecast is 4.7% for Dallas. What's interesting is it's the highest expected year-over-year value forecast increase that's number 5 through 10. Really interesting about it. I'm not real sure what the deal is there. I'm not sure why it's not higher up on their list. Median rent, $1,621. Year-over-year rent forecast is an increase of 1.4. Job openings per person, 0.020. And income growth is expected to be 3.5%. Population growth, 1.8%. I think that's pretty reasonable. And the unemployment rate is 3.3%, which is lower than all of the properties in the top 5. So, again, not sure why Dallas is where it is. In terms of sexiness and draw, the number 10 item on this list is actually looking pretty cool. Low barrier to entry in terms of cost. Now, of course, in just about any city, you're able to find areas where you can obtain a home that's going to, and because of what you're doing, right? You're typically taking something that's a little bit distressed. So you're buying it at a discount, and then you're doing work on it to make it more attractive, and hopefully you're renting it for a period of time and doing whatever it is you do. If you're a buy and hold person, great. If you're a buy, hold for a certain period of time, then sell person, that's also great. Either way, you're adding value, right? You're improving the market. But that number just gives you an idea of what the average home sells for. So with any luck, you're paying less than that, right? Number 9 on the list, and this one's interesting because drove through there on the way to pick up the kiddo. Number 9, Portland, Oregon, with a median home value of $370,700. The year-over-year forecast increase is 3.7%. Median rent is $1,902. And the year-over-year rent forecast is an increase of 3.4%. So they're predicting a pretty big increase in rent in Portland. Job openings per person, 0.018. Income growth, 7.6%. That's actually pretty good. That's the highest of any of the properties that are ranked 10 through 6. And population growth expectations are 1.5% and an unemployment rate of 4%, which is the highest, second highest on the list at all. Interestingly enough, the unemployment rate is the highest on a top 3 city. Portland, I don't think is necessarily a bad call. Portland, I think, is great because there's also a lot of suburbs around Portland. It's kind of a sprawling place. $370,000, depending on who you are and what you want to do, that may be too much for you. Number 8 on our list, and this is one we've talked about before. We've had 2 guests come and talk about it who've had great success in this city. I've talked about it in terms of cities that just, whenever I do numbers on properties in this city, I tend to find good stuff. It's Nashville, Tennessee. Again, relatively low barrier to entry. $228,900 is the median home value. This is the number 8 on the Zillow list. Year-over-year home value forecast, 3.8%. So remember, when we're talking about this year-over-year value forecast, this is how much they expect your property to increase in value over the next year. Now, the median rent is $1,498. That's an interesting number, because it's less than the median rent in Dallas, which is where a house is going to cost you less. So that's an interesting one to note. Nashville is also seeing a year-over-year rent forecast of 0.1%. So that is less than what we expect to see in terms of rent percentage increase compared to Dallas. So keep that in mind. It's not as sexy as you'd like. Job openings per person, 0.021. Income growth, 3.5%. Population growth 1.9, so good population growth is expected. What's interesting is with that kind of population growth and with an unemployment rate in Nashville of 2.2%, you would expect rents to increase more than that, right? You've got nearly a 2% expectation, and that's in the top 3 in terms of regions on this entire list in terms of expected population growth, and an unemployment rate of 2.2%, which is among the lowest. Is there anything lower? No, the lowest unemployment rate. Why in the world would you not expect rents to go up? I think Nashville's worth looking at. I think that the expectations on what you're going to be able to raise your rent to are unrealistic. The only thing that would change that for me is if there is a ton of rental properties being built, like maybe getting saturated in the rental market for apartments, that type of thing. Number 7 on our list is Denver, Colorado, with a median home value of $376,500. Year-over-year home value forecast is 3.0. Median rent, $2,056. So we've broken that $2,000 barrier in terms of rent. 2.4% is the expected increase in rents over the next year. Let's see, 0.029 in terms of job openings per person, 2.3% expected income growth, and 1.4% population growth with a 2.6% unemployment rate. And again, Denver is one of those cities where big mushroom effect there, right? You can go right for Denver, the city of Denver, but Denver is gigantic. You can go to the heart of Denver. You can expand out into areas surrounding Denver. You can head north away from Denver. You can go south from Denver. Big communities all along those 2 major corridors that hug Denver that could be excellent opportunities for you as an investor. Now, number 6 on our list, and this one's kind of interesting. It surprises me that it's this high on the list. We've heard other numbers that indicate things are softening in Austin. These numbers tend to bear that out, but we're going to see. Median home value, $277,600 with a year-over-year value forecast of 3.3%. Median rent, $1,713 with an expectation that rents will drop in Austin by 0.8%. So if you're investing in Austin, just knowing those numbers, you would want to budget for that. I would charge the max rent you can now, but I would assume your numbers moving forward with just under a 1% drop in your potential rent for a property. The job openings per person, 0.023. Income growth is expected to be 5.7. Population growth is expected to be 2.8. That is the highest population growth on this list. Unemployment rate is at 2.8. Now, with a population growth of 2.8, we have to ask that question again. Why do you expect rent to go down in a city where you're expecting population growth? It just doesn't make sense. And in addition to that, you're continuing to see values increase. So I'd want to look more at that. It seems to me that might be a situation where Austin is a community where some of the submarkets would really vary from the other. I know when I was there last that Eastern Austin and Southeastern Austin were the less desirable areas. Maybe that's not the same anymore, but my point is you may be finding better performance in terms of these numbers by selecting your sub-community better. Number 5 on the list, and it's interesting, this one's number 5. This is usually number 1 or number 2, along with the other thing that is at number 1 or number 2, San Francisco, California. And this median home price is, no question about it, wrong. I ran the numbers for San Francisco just the other day, and they were up more like around 1.3 million. So I don't know where this number's coming from. In fact, last year, I had the same kind of quibbling with the Zillow list last year. So we'll see. $893,100 they're saying is the median home value in San Francisco. But you know what? This is projected. So maybe this is just them projecting what it's going to be in 2018. But they're also saying with a 3.8% value increase. So that would imply that $893,000 is the current home value, and that isn't. It is just not. Median rent, $3,413. That may be true. I'm not as plugged in on the rental market in San Francisco, but I know that that's also pretty close to the median rent in San Jose, if not. Yeah, in fact, it's a little bit lower according to their numbers, which I can't imagine is correct. They expect a decline in rent of 0.2% year over year, 0.029 in terms of job openings per person, 9.2% income growth. population growth of 0.5%. So very anemic population growth. But remember, we've also seen periods of time where they've actually had negative population growth in San Francisco and Silicon Valley in general. And we're also in Silicon Valley, as I've mentioned on previous shows, seeing between 30 and 40% of people polled saying that if they were given the opportunity, they'd be out of here. Now, by out of here, they don't even mean just Silicon Valley. They mean California. All right. And the unemployment rate is at 3.5% for San Francisco. Next on our list, number 4, Charlotte, North Carolina. Another city we've talked about, one I like, and I like it on this list. I like it as number 4 because it's the lowest barrier to entry in terms of acquiring a property. $181,600 is the current median home price, and they expect a 4% year-over-year home value increase. Median rent's $1,300, but when you start to do the math, it works in terms of what you can get in Charlotte. Year-over-year rent forecast is an increase of 1.9%, 0.020 job openings per person. Charlotte's also expecting income growth of 9.4% and population growth of 2% and an unemployment rate of 3.9%. In terms of standouts so far on this list, Charlotte and Dallas are really doing it for me. Austin, I think, would require a little bit more poking around to figure out what's going on, but Charlotte and Dallas are looking the most sexy. Number 3 on our list is Seattle, Washington, with a median home value of $463,800. I have a hard time believing that one. When I was just looking in the suburb of Seattle called Redmond, when I was considering buying an investment property to house my son in it while he goes to school up there, that is not what the median home price was. Maybe in Seattle, the actual city of Seattle, it's different. But man, that $463,000 is not what's going to get you a median home value in Redmond. They expect 5.4% increase in property values. Median rent is $2,243. Year-over-year rent forecast is an increase of 3.5. Job openings per person 0.027. Income growth 4.4%. 1.7% population growth. Unemployment rate 4.1. So pretty reasonable population growth. The other numbers are pretty reasonable. My argument would be that I'm not convinced, that that's the median home price. Maybe if you shop around, you could find something. But I'm also not convinced that that number is based in reality. So I don't know why I always have so much trouble with the Zillow list. Yeah. Number 2 on the list, Raleigh, North Carolina. I like this one too. $233,900 is the median home value, but it's got other good numbers. It's got year-over-year home value forecast. They expect an increase of 3.7%. And so let's do this. I keep going back to Dallas because I don't get it. Here's Dallas. Cheaper median home price right now. More increase expected on your money. You're expected to get a full % more in property value out of a property in Dallas than what you're going to get out of Raleigh, North Carolina. Plus, you get more rent in Dallas. Rent in Raleigh, North Carolina is $1,441, and rent is $1,621 in Dallas. The year-over-year forecast for rent increase is 1.2% for Raleigh, 1.4% for Dallas. The job openings per person number, frankly, I don't really care about that one. 0.022. I just want to know the unemployment rate. But the income growth there is expected to be 9% in Raleigh. That beats out Dallas with an expectation of 3.5%, which is something that feeds the strength of your customers, right? The folks who may rent your property or buy it, depending on what you're doing. Population growth is expected to be 2.3% in Raleigh. It's going to be 1.8% in Dallas. And unemployment rate in Raleigh is 3.6, while it's 3.3 in Dallas. Why in the world, from the standpoint of an investor, is Dallas not rated higher than Raleigh? Given those numbers, I sure as hell would put it there. You're paying less for the house. You're making more on the money you do put into the house. You're making more rent per property. And your projection of how much it's going to increase over the next year is higher than Raleigh. Yeah, I don't get it. Dallas would be my choice. Now let's hit number 1. This one's interesting because, again, I can give you a lot of info on this one. This is San Jose, California. Median home value, and they're pretty close to right on this median home value, $1.1283 million. That's $1,128,300. Nuts, right? That's the median home price. What do they expect for a year-over-year value increase? 8.9% is what they expect. Highest on the board, ridiculously high. Median rent, $3,514. That's probably about right. But here's an interesting number. Their year-over-year rent forecast is a decline of 0.5%. So they're expecting home values to jump through the roof and rents to go down. That is odd to me, just from those numbers. But there's more numbers that make it even more odd. Job openings per person, 0.036. Income growth, 7.9%. Population growth, 0.1%. At least that's not negative. Employment rate, 3.5. So with that population growth, if there's any positive population growth, and they have all this expectation of properties continuing to rise, why would you expect to see a decrease in year-over-year rent? Now, the only thing I can think of, since I know what's going on in the market here, is their expectation that we're going to have more apartment-style accommodations coming online. And that's absolutely true. But I just don't see it having an effect. If the margin of error on this is 0.5 or 1%, okay, maybe I would buy that. But I just don't see rents declining like that. However, I will say that in my personal experience, while I've seen rents go up over the last, say, 6 months, or I've seen rents go up over the last year, over the last 6 months or so, I have not. So in other words, I've continued to see property values increase, but rents have remained relatively flat. So clearly there is some sort of a wall that's been hit. The idea that there'd be a decline, I think, is a bit of a stretch, but they're only calling for a 0.5% decline. So we'll have to see how that plays out. Marketplaces where tons of apartment complexes come online may have a big influence in some areas, but I'm not 100% convinced. But given all that, why would you want to invest in San Jose anyway? Now, granted, the expectation is you're going to get 8.9%. San Jose has already proven that when bad things happen, it is sensitive to them, right? When we saw the decline back in 2005, 6, 7, San Jose got decimated, right? Along with Morgan Hill and Gilroy and all these suburbs of Silicon Valley. Absolutely destroyed so many of these properties' values. However, if we're thinking forward, right? And maybe you don't believe, as I do, that we are headed for another downturn, or maybe you disagree with how severe it'll be. Maybe you think, well, you know what, Robert's probably right, but it's not going to be as dramatic as last time. I tend to subscribe to the idea that the way we got out of it last time actually didn't get us out of it. It kind of falsely propped up things through printing money. There's a lot of fun things we could talk about depending on what sort of economic model you believe in, whether you're a Keynesian or you're more a Hayek kind of person in terms of economics, Milton Friedman, all that kind of fun stuff. But I am not so much a Keynesian. If I was a Keynesian, I'd believe everything's going to be fine, but I'm not. If you want to find out what that all means, I got a great book I could suggest you can read by Hayek, who's more of an Austrian model guy. If you want to read other Austrian model economists, you can Google that. So my feeling is that all this stuff just sort of puts off the hangover, and this is really all that we've done. There's actually a great video on YouTube that I might link to. In fact, you know what? I will. In the show notes for today's show, I'll link to a great little YouTube video. It's like a rap battle between Keynes and Hayek. Kind of funny, but also a fun way to illustrate what these two guys are about. But in any event, even if you argue about the severity and what's going to happen, it's hard not to argue that some areas are more sensitive to others. And that'd be another reason why I'd talk about places like Dallas or Nashville or Charlotte. Why? If you look back at their numbers, they weren't impacted as hard as places like San Jose and San Francisco. And I would suggest to do that with any research you do. Any research you do in any marketplace, you want your agent to run those numbers going all the way back to the year 2000. You want to see what happened when the dot-com bubble burst in the early 2000s. You want to see what happened when the total meltdown occurred in 2005, 6, 7. Because you compare that to different areas and you're going to see different effects. And again, we've compared that in past shows over the years. San Jose and San Francisco, you see a crazy drop. In some other areas, you might see a little bit of a blip or something barely noticeable at all. But in any event, that's Zillow's top 10. I honestly don't. Maybe it's not aimed so much at the investor and there's some sort of other rationale. But if really what you care about is home prices income and jobs and new residents, it seems like even under that measure, it's ranked incorrectly. But for us as investors, we've definitely been able to pick a few cherries out of that bowl. And hopefully you might do a little research and find yourself eyeing maybe one of those properties in Charlotte, North Carolina, and finding that very first investment property. All right, folks. As always, the goal here is to leave you with far more value on the table than the time you invested. Hope we've achieved it. Thanks again for listening. I'll talk to y'all next time.